And now, Working Man Radio with your host, Joe Lyles.
We are looking right down the barrel of the social, political, economic conundrum that is American society. We are looking right down the barrel of the problem. One of the problems, we have a divided working class. The working class is divided against itself along racial lines. American society is divided along racial lines. It should be divided along class lines, but it is not. The upper class likes society divided along racial lines. If white working people and black working people are at odds with each other, are not voting the same way, right? My son worked in a print shop up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and half the people that worked there were white and half the people that worked there were black, and they were all working people. They were all blue-collar people. They were all hourly employees. They had exactly the same interests. They had exactly the same problems. They shared exactly the same experience in life, and the white people voted for Republicans and the blacks voted for Democrats. If they all voted for Democrats, and if the Democrats would please kindly represent the working class the way they did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, if those folks voted for working class supporting Democrats, we would have higher wages, we would have better benefits, we would have health care, we would have good health care, we would have Medicare for everybody. But we don't have that. And because of this racial division, and the reason for the racial division is fear. It's fear. And I mean it is existential, fundamental, deep-rooted fear. It's why you can't overcome it. Are you a progressive? Are you saying, how do we get people to vote for their economic interests? The way you do it is you get them to stop being afraid. That's what George Zimmerman's problem is. He's afraid. He wants to be a cop, and he wants to carry a gun because he's afraid. And who's he afraid of? He's afraid of the black folks. And why is he afraid of the black folks? There are historical roots to this. The historical roots of this go back all the way before the Civil War. White folks in the South have been afraid of the big black uprising for 200 years. When you jump on the back of a tiger and start riding the tiger around, it becomes a real problem getting off of the tiger's back. When you have your foot on somebody's neck, you have a real problem letting them up. Because who knows, they might take a dim view of having had a foot on their neck. And this fear of black revenge, they're going to take revenge on us. Limbaugh talks about the revenge the black folks are going to take on us. He's talking about that all the time. Oh, and meanwhile, if you want to set up a hyper-competitive, got mine, get yours, get out there and claw to get yours, Limbaugh, again, talks about what are you willing to do to get it. He talks about having ambition and being willing to get out there and do what it takes to make it, which he admires, unless you're black. What about black folks who have learned to claw to get what they need and get what they want? And when you teach people, you raise them in a society where you have to be hyper competitive, and you have to be able to get out there and get out there and get yours. And don't be surprised if your underclass develops a hyper competitive aggressiveness, willing to get out there and get theirs. And don't be surprised if they don't get a little scary. And they're scary no matter what they do. They're scary when they break the rules to get theirs, and they're scary when they play by the rules to get theirs. Because I'm going to tell you something. The great fear of the white man in the economic marketplace is the competition. Meanwhile, the great fear of the white man in the social setting is black crime. But there's another dimension to this. There's another dimension to this. There was a Republican in South Carolina that told how he became a Republican. He became a Republican when he was 15 years old and some black kid stole his lunch money. He was at school and some black kid came up and grabbed him and stole his lunch money. And he became a Republican at that point. What does being a Republican have to do with having somebody steal your lunch money? It has everything to do with it. Right? The dirty secret. The Republican Party is about bigotry. That's who they are. They are not about, they used to be about business. The hegemonic group, the people who set policy, the people who set economic policy, that's Wall Street. But the people who vote, it's all about bigotry. It's all about fear. It's all about having your lunch money stolen by a black kid. And that white kid, by the way, there's a phrase, there's one of it's a popular saying, and conservatives use it. Conservatives will tell you this. They will tell you that a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. That's right. Have you ever heard that? A liberal is a conservative. A conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. If you've ever actually been victimized by these scary black animals, when did George Zimmerman have an experience like that? And here's the real thing. Here's the real point of all of this. Trayvon Martin knew how to handle himself. He did. He knew how to fight. He knew how to fight because where he comes from, people know how to fight. He knew how to fight. Where he comes from, people know how to fight. And in society at large, in American society at large, among white folks, 50, 75, 100 years ago, white folks knew how to fight too. 17-year-old boys learned how to fight. Right? There are a lot of people out there who they believe in nonviolence. We should not fight. Fighting is not the way to solve your problems. Fighting is not the way for adults to solve their problems. It's not. It isn't. I do not advocate that 30-year-old men settle their differences through fisticuffs. But before you learn how to solve problems without fighting, without violence, without physical putting your dukes up, that is an advanced skill that you learn as an adult. And before you can ever learn it, you have to learn how to take care of yourself. When I was 17 years old, I got into some fist fights. Just like Trayvon Martin. And I'm not afraid of Trayvon Martin because I can handle myself. George Zimmerman never learned how. That Republican in South Carolina never learned how. All these conservative yellow bellies talking about their guns, they never learned how to handle themselves. That's the problem. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. You've been listening to Working Man Radio with Joe Lyle at joelylesradio.com.